In the discussions, Ciano had stressed that Italy would not be ready for war until 1943. The Germans were evasive, and Mussolini ordered Ciano not to press the point. The agreement was signed. A week later, Mussolini wrote to Hitler, reminding him of Italy's need for a breathing space of 3 to 4 years. Hitler did not reply. In August, Ciano discovered that Germany was about to attack Poland.
I returned to Rome completely disgusted with the Germans, with their leader, with their way of doing things. They have betrayed us and lied to us. Now they are dragging us into an adventure which we do not want, which may compromise the regime and the country as a whole.
Mussolini had walked into a trap. He had repeatedly promised Hitler that the two fascist nations would march together, but his armed forces were in no state to fight a major war. In propaganda films, Italy's army was portrayed as among the most formidable in Europe, but Mussolini had neglected the military preparations his ambitions required. His soldiers carried rifles introduced in 1891. By the end of the Second World War, they had still not been replaced. His 3 armoured divisions existed only on paper. The army had no proper tanks. Military vehicles required for important parades were sometimes borrowed from the police. Italian artillery dated back to World War I. In the fascist Grand Council, Mussolini berated his generals for the army's deficiencies, but the fault was his. Italy's limited resources had been thrown away in 4 years of war in Ethiopia and Spain. As evidence of Italy's unreadiness, he now sent Hitler a shopping list that deliberately exaggerated Italy's needs. To fight alongside Germany, Italy would need 17 million tons of supplies. Hitler, bowing to the inevitable, released Mussolini from his military obligations. Most Italians were unaware of these high-level exchanges. Fascist propaganda had not prepared them for Hitler's invasion of Poland in September 1939.
Qui in Italia vivevamo tutti in un modo di spensierata incoscienza.
In Italy, we lived a normal, carefree life, blissfully unaware of what was happening outside our borders.
Senza renderci conto di tutto quello che poteva accadere intorno ai nostri confini. Si lavorava.
So we worked, we sang, and we marched. The distant noise of war wasn't heard. Perhaps we didn't want to hear it. I was on holiday, and the hotel I was staying in had given a big party. A lot of happy and cheerful people had been there.
Il giorno dopo, guardando fuori dalla finestra dell'albergo,
the following day, through my hotel window, I saw a crowd of people, all extremely upset and shouting and running in the direction of the station. Cars, old carts and lorries were everywhere. Barefooted people, people on bikes. Everybody looked exceedingly worried. This was, of course, the outcome of the news they'd heard that morning. That is to say, the outbreak of war.
Life continued as usual. Italy remained neutral, or non-belligerent, as Mussolini preferred to call it. He vacillated, ashamed to be neutral, unwilling to join Hitler until a German victory seemed certain, and, in spite of his alliance, still tempted to try to bargain with the Allies.
During the period of non-belligerence, Mussolini continued to put forward his proposals to Britain. On several occasions, he let them know that he was prepared to break the Pact of Steel if Britain and France were ready to make concessions in the Mediterranean, and give Italy the guarantee that she would be given protection against Germany. Mussolini's proposals were ignored.
In May 1940, Mussolini's doubts were swept away by Hitler's successful offensive on the Western Front. Italy, he announced, cannot remain absent when the fate of Europe is at stake.
Gli aerei sorvolano le opere fortificate francesi, prolungamento della linea Maginot, lungo le frontiere del Lussemburgo e del Belgio fino al mare. La formidabile barriera è stata infranta dal valore e dallo spirito di sacrificio dei soldati del Reich.
On the 10th of May, German armies invaded Holland and Belgium. Mussolini waited. 10 days later, his generals warned him that the end of the war was in sight. If he waited much longer, he might miss a place at the peace table and a share of the spoils. Not until the 10th of June, a fortnight after the British retreat from Dunkirk, did Mussolini take his long-suffering country into yet another war.
I tedeschi avevano vinto tutti.
The German victory was complete. The Germans had been betrayed by Italy in 1914 and looked like being betrayed by them again in 1939.
Dall'Italia.
Well, what was the fate going to be of an ally that could not be trusted?
A questo punto,
everything at this point persuaded him to enter the war.
Entrare in guerra.
L'ora delle decisioni irrevocabili. La dichiarazione di guerra è già stata consegnata agli ambasciatori.
Hitler's military success, aided by Mussolini's tried and trusted propaganda machine, pointed to a quick and easy victory. The people cheered, as they had done for 17 years. But as the crowd left the square, there was a change of mood.
Looking out of the window from Palazzo Chigi, where I was at the time, we didn't see any youths excited about the prospect of a war. We saw instead rather thoughtful people who were going home with folded flags, asking themselves those questions they hadn't thought of in the square.
On the 22nd of June, a full week after the Germans occupied Paris, Mussolini decided that Italian prestige required an Alpine offensive against the fatally weakened French. The attack was a farce. Italy's greatly superior force suffered heavy losses and was saved only by the collapse of France. In the years that followed, defeat in battle became the norm. Mussolini's addiction to minor wars of conquest had led him to throw his country into a war of major powers, for which he had left Italy unprepared and hopelessly ill-equipped. His grand design of turning easygoing Italians into a nation of cold-blooded warriors was always an illusion. Mussolini united and modernized Italy. He influenced Europe. But he misused his enormous personal power and misled his people. Years later, a fellow countryman looked back on Mussolini's hold on Italians. He wrote, "They saw in him only the tenor for whom they raved as they had raved years before for Caruso. As one does with tenors, they enjoyed his long notes and the melody without paying attention to the words. If they had listened more carefully, they would not have been surprised by the catastrophe later, for Mussolini had announced it."